Good morning and welcome to The Point. It is Friday, October 16th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, channel 7, 11 and 20, and good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. Usually on Fridays it is open line, but this week we are facilitating representatives of the Parliamentary Elections Office. There have been concerns raised right here on the program, and this is the day that opened up both our schedules to facilitate the interview. I have joining us the Supervisor of Elections, Elvis Morain, as well as Voter and Civic Registration Officer at the Parliamentary Elections Office, Mr. Ferdinand Phillip. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Blossom, and we are happy to be part of the program this morning, and we thank you for making that adjustment to accommodate us.
Appreciate it. I also see that somebody just joined, Michelle Millett.
Yes, Michael is a system administrator.
You're right, system administrator. Good morning, Mr. Millett. So let's get right into the conversation, gentlemen. First, let's start with a broad look at what's taking place at the Parliamentary Elections Office before we get into specific topics. What's the latest update coming out of the office?
Well, I would start here, and of course, we would chime in. As you know, we are actually the Parliamentary Electoral Office right now is engaged in two activities, which is kind of a encompassing of each other. One, we are in the period of continuous registration, and two, we are also in the period where we are replacing, for those persons who were registered prior to the 31st of January 2020, we are replacing those cards. As you know, all these cards were expired. So that basically, these are the two major activities now taking place as it relates to the Parliamentary Election Office.
In terms of the continuous registration and the issuance of the voter ID, how has the traffic been at the electoral office and maybe the district offices as well?
It has been, well, we started off on the 3rd of February in terms of the replacement of the cards. And the traffic there has been very steady, for the period prior to the onset of course, the first case of COVID-19. So we had quite a number of persons coming forward to replace their cards. And as you know, well, the continuous registration continues. So as you mature, you get to the age of 18, you're coming. So that also is happening. But of course, the traffic was tremendous in the first 2 months after starting the process.
Do you have figures as it relates to how many people have, maybe the number of new voters that we've had, the people who have come in to replace their voter ID cards, and so any figures in any of those categories?
Blossom, I would let Mr. Millett, who is the system administrator, speak to that.
No problem.
So he can give us, a brief overview as to where we are in terms of numbers.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mr. Millett.
Before Mr. Millett speaks.
Sure. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Phillip.
I think I have the actual figures on me right now.
Yes, go ahead with them.
Yeah, so I would give it. We have had 16,415 persons having their IDs replaced. Again, 16,415 persons having their IDs replaced. And 1,274 persons first-timers.
And
again, 16,415 replacements and 1,274 first-timers.
And how many people are on
again,
the complete list?
To the end of September.
How many people are on the complete list?
We have not tabulated. Yeah, but the figure goes around 79 to 80,000 there and thereabouts. I didn't put it together as yet.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Millett?
Yes, good morning, Blossom, and good morning to listeners also.
Morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we just on the figures. So I'm going to chip in now and again when questions come up or we are in a situation where it is in my domain to respond because I'm the systems administrator that relates to the printing of cards, printing of lists, removal of persons who would have died, and so. So when we get to this point in the program, then I'll come.
All right, well, then let's get into it. The replacement of the cards. We have had a few concerns from members of the public in relation to, one, the process, two, get the new card or the renewed card, as well as the length of time it takes from when I applied to when I can get the card. How have we been responding? What contributes to the delay in getting the card to the people that have applied for the renewal? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so if I was to respond to this here, we would have had a number of persons making application for the replacement of the card, as well as there are first-timers who are applying for the cards. The volume of persons applying is a lot. And if we want to go way back to 2012, 2013, where we have had persons waiting for quite a long time for the card, which now we're in a more modern time anyways, but we can process the card quickly. However, we can only print at a particular rate. Daily, on average, about 700 cards is printed. Between 500 to 700 cards is printed. We can only print at that particular rate. As well as there are days when you're going to have a lot of persons registering. So it goes through a process. Somebody comes to do the application. Once they complete with the application at the constituency office, we have the second process where the registration officer would have to go over that application, validate the information. Okay, that person says they're living in that place. We have to ensure that that person is in the correct polling division. So at times a site visit may have to be done to ascertain where that person actually lives. So today the registration is being done, but even before it gets to the stage where the registration officer is complete. So let's take, for example, you have 200 persons registering at a particular polling station today. It therefore means that the registration officer has to go through that 200 application. It will take a little while for them to complete that. And after that registration officer completes the verification, here at the main office, it is also checked again before the approval stage is done. And then you're talking, one registration officer may have 200 cards a day to do, but here at the main office, you have like 200 by 15 constituency to get approved. So it takes a while to get this done. And after this is done, then we have to start the printing process. And even after the card is printed, it goes through some procedure here at the office before the card is then returned to the office. So prior to this heavy influx of registration, a card would have taken on average about 2 weeks, sometime less, sometime a little more, but no longer than 2.5 weeks. And this is normal registration. Now where we're talking about 1,000+ registration going on per day with all these visits and so that has to be done, it means we're going to have a bottleneck somewhere. But I can safely say that even as we speak, all persons who are registered up to the 28th of what we know in October, persons who are registered up to September, these cards have already been printed. So persons were complaining that we were held back a bit in terms of getting their cards, but I can tell you that we are almost where we want to be, where we can get back to that 2 weeks, 3 week cycle. So we're just asking persons to bear with us because of the volume of cards. You have printer that is going 24/7 that has a cycle. And this is also, I could just chip in that here. This is also one of the reasons why the new cards, the expiration date is varied on the different cards. So unlike we had where everybody's card was expiring on the 31st of January, and we have this heavy influx now. The new cards with the expiration dates, although it is for another 10 years, but the dates wouldn't all expire at the same time. So we wouldn't have another period where we have all these people, 80,000 people having to replace their cards at the same time. So this is one of the measures that were put in place to mitigate against a situation like this reoccurring.
Mr. Morain, Mr. Phillip?
Blossom, just to sort of kind of put in perspective what Mr. Millet was just saying in terms of the delay for the process. I see the process as an upside down pyramid. And let me tell you why I say that. In that when we enter, we have 19 offices, right, where persons can go in and make the application, enter that information. The next level, we have 15 registration officers, okay? That's the next level where you go out and, as Mr. Millet said, and so on. Then you come to the process of approval, where you only have 2 persons approving. And then the printing and processing for the return of this card so that you can collect it has 1 person. So I think people would appreciate the fact that based on this, and it's done for a particular reason, to ensure that the integrity of the system and the process is maintained. I just wanted to make that point.
So are you saying, Mr. Morain, that the office is understaffed and you need more workers at the Parliamentary Elections Office?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what the process is. That is what is in the Act, right? And as I said to you, the process was created by, well, let me say, I want to believe it was created such that you know that the accountability can, at that level, is reside to a single unit and not just you have a number of persons, in case something were to go wrong. So I believe that's what the process is. As Mr. Millet said, the problem we are faced with now is not because of the continuous registration, right? Because based on the number of persons who are mature to come new electors, you can manage that very easily. The process now is the replacement of the card. And of course, if you go back, Blossom, to the 2012-2013 period, when we initiate that new system, we had that kind of, maybe worse, because at that time, everybody had to get onto the system. Now people are still using, they might have other means of identifying themselves, so they're not rushing, as some people might just, that's the only means, which, yes, we understand the secondary use of the card, but we do understand as an office the importance of this, and that is why we're trying, to accommodate as much people as possible.
Thousands of people registering, and you only have, for instance, like you pointed out, the 2 approval officers. Is it that maybe for a temporary time you need more to at least speed up the process until maybe the end of 2020 or the first month in 2021?
Not really, because you see, Blossom, the point a lot of people are missing, it is not a re-registration, right? And it is a voter's ID, right? A voter's registration card. Now, so in that case, what we are saying, it doesn't affect your ability to participate in an election if it were to call, in this period, right? So in that case, what we are saying is that, hey, there's no need to bring people on the process, because as Mr. Millet would tell you, now we see, fluctuation in terms of as persons would make application, read the replacement of the cards. So for example, we had some periods where we had some low numbers, we had, so in that case, it may not be sufficient to say, yes, you need, because I would have agreed with that statement coming when we look at, for instance, the February, March, when we had a real influx, but in terms of now, I may say, I'm not sure that we really need more persons, because I'm assured you that we are almost to that comfort zone where persons, even replacing the card, can feel comfortably, can be returned in a reasonable time.
And something else you said, Mr. Morain. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Phillip.
If I can add also, in terms of, let's say, banks, at the end of the month, we tend to have a heavy influx of persons utilizing the services of the banks. At the revenue offices, at several functions, you tend, at a certain period of time, you tend to see a heavy traffic of persons. And persons do not, the entities themselves do not necessarily bring in extra workers. If we talk about the elections office now, there are some sensitivities that we need to be mindful of as we just suggest that we bring in more workers. Persons need to be trained. Persons need to have a certain level of integrity, really confidentiality of what we are involved in. So yes, we do appreciate the point that you raised. However, just as I say, with Nawasa or Gremlek, after a few days, the traffic eases. And as the supervisor was saying, even at this point, we did see very heavy traffic February into March. And I think we closed at the 13th of March. However, it has become quite manageable at this point in time. And so even as we say that, we also want to commend the general public because by and large, they have been understanding. Yes, they have their concerns as it's their right, but they have been understanding in the whole process.
Additionally, if I should add in here also, we would all know the experience. You go to pay your driver's license and there are persons queued up in there. And when the police officer takes your photo, does what he has to do, then you go and you sit and you wait. He attends to 3 or 4 persons even before your card comes out of the machine. The machine that prints the card is not like a regular printer that spits out 20, 30 pages per second. It takes a while. So even if we had 10 persons doing the approval and all of the cards have been approved, the machine does the printing at a particular rate. So having all the approval done is one, but we can only distribute the cards as fast as they come out of the machine. And as I said, sometimes on average, we do between 500 to 700 prints daily. And that's what it is. So that's also another constraint that we have as it relates to the printing. Somebody may say, well, here's what, if that's a constraint, then get a second printer or a third printer or fourth printer. And again, this is not how things have been designed. Mr. Morain, I think, would have done justice to it by stating the purpose of the card. And we are working, and as I said previously, we're almost where we would like to be in terms of the distribution of the cards.
Something Mr. Morain said while answering the same question that I've heard conversations about in terms of the process to renew my voter's registration card is similar, if not the same, to when I had to register previously, ahead of the 2018 election at most recent. That is causing some confusion for some people in terms of if it's a renewal, why I need the same documents that I needed when I had to register. How can you explain that for the people who may be having a tough time understanding the process and why the documents are needed?
So before Mr. Morain or Mr. Phillip comes in, that's directly in my domain here. And the thing about it, Blossom, is that there is information available. Persons need to put themselves in position to get information. Many times we prefer to take information second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand at times, whereas we can get it, as we say, sometimes directly from the horse's mouth. We have the information from since someone was registered. If somebody gets 10 replacement cards, we have the information. But because of the integrity of the system, we have to ensure, one, the person who is registering is a live person, someone who is alive. Secondly, we have to ensure that you are you who are registering. So it's not just about document, but we want the living person who is there. So we need you, we need your picture, we need your fingerprint, we need everything. So a person may say, well, everything is in the system already. Why not just do a reprint? The system, because of the nature and the security that is involved, doesn't allow us to just reprint a card. So here's what. There might be persons who are listening now. You would have gone to collect your card one day and then you realize when you step out, oh, I realize, well, I'm male, but I'm seeing on the card female. So inadvertently, we would have made an error in terms of realizing that the sex was incorrect. What that person has to do, they have to register all over again, even if they just collected the card. The system is designed to ensure that every contact you have with the system all of you is there. All of you, by this I mean your fingerprint, your picture, your signature, everything. Because here's what's going to happen, or here's what can be said. Somebody is dead, and that person was removed from the list. If we had the ability to just do a reprint like this, then we can put back dead people on the list. So this cannot happen. This is why the process is like that. It may seem archaic in terms of, well, my data is there, but because of the integrity of the system, it is done in that fashion. Persons say sometimes, and I've heard it on programs, here's what, I couldn't find my name, and then they put back my name. Nobody could put back your name on the list. If your name, and it happens in very rare circumstances. So for example, I'm the one who removed name from the list whenever I get the list from the births and death registry. So let's suppose there are 3 John Thomas in the system, and 2 might be of the same age, and that list came from the births and death registry saying John Thomas, and he gives his particular. And in removal, I accidentally removed the wrong John Thomas. What the office has to do is to call the John Thomas and say, here's what, we've had a little error and we would have made a mistake. We apologize for that, but can you come back in the office with your documents so we can get you back on the list? We cannot put back people on the list. Persons must come to register. Someone says again, here's what, I am in that polling division and they put me over there, they move me. No one can be moved, and it is known. Persons know that no one can be moved by the office. The office cannot do anything. Once your card is in your hand, any correction, any change, you want to move from one PD to the next or one constituency to the next, you have to come in person with all your documents to get this thing done. That's how the process is. So the only reason why persons have to bring their documents again, Blossom, to answer your question, is that the system is designed to ensure that a live person is actually doing the registration, and we cannot just do what we want when we want.
Blossom, if I can just add to that, as Mr. Millett had said, we have heard several persons, have kept on saying that, persons are removed from the list and so forth. And, we are urging persons out there because we recognize that there is a wide viewership, listenership to this program. If you have evidence, and that's the whole thing, it's easy to spread a rumor out there. But as Mr. Millett re-emphasized on several occasions, we do not have the physical ability nor the legal ability to do that. And if you have evidence of any of those occurrences happening, please bring it to us. Because one of the things that he kept on emphasizing was the integrity of this whole system. And sometimes persons do not understand, Mr. Miller used a very vital word there, archaic. Some of the measures that guard this whole system seem to be archaic, but they are there for the protection of every member of the electorate. And so it may, at times in this fast-paced world, we may feel, well, we want to move real time, but it's there to protect you. And so on any occasion you discover something, we call it a discrepancy, you have an objection, bring it to our attention. And we urge persons not to just go out there and to spread rumors, because rumors tend to have weight. They tend to fly like juicy gossips. And so Mr. Millett is giving you from the horse's mouth. Mr. Morain is also giving you from the horse's mouth. Please, if you have any evidence of discrepancy, we are here to work along with you. And we depend upon your critique in these cases to ensure that our process works well. So again, I urge all concerned, if you have evidence, bring it to our attention.
Okay, on that note, let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and field questions from members of the public. I see the phones ringing since the program started. We'll get to that on the next side of the break. This is To The Point with the Parliamentary Elections Office. We'll be right back.
Packaging House, located at Grenville Street, St. George's. We offer superior quality packaging materials. So whether you are a vendor, shopkeeper, own your own restaurant, or you just need to package some items at home, we are your solution. We carry biodegradable paper plates, paper bags, cake and pizza boxes, food boxes, and food trays, just to name a Packaging House. We're open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Contact us on 440-0012. That number again, 440-0012. Packaging House. Bag it, wrap it, we've got it.
Avoid the most common causes of spreading the flu. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue, dispose of it straight away, and either wash your hands or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy. Help prevent cold and flu by washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. That's the time it takes to remove most germs. No soap and water? No worries when you've got alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Welcome back to the Point. We're speaking with representatives of the Parliamentary Elections Officer, the Supervisor of Elections, Elvis Morain, Voter and Civic Registration Officer Ferdinand Phillip, and Systems Administrator Mr. Michael Millett. This is the point of the program where we call on our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for the officials. 435-2041, that's the landline number. You can also WhatsApp us on that number. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. You can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on Facebook and YouTube. If we can, please keep at least the phone calls to 1 minute or less to facilitate as many comments that we may be able to get during the program. That would be appreciated, and please keep it respectful. Let's go to our first caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. I usually listen skillfully, and I sometimes accept what people say, and sometimes I do not accept. Now, my feeling is once you maneuver in a machine, you could able to make it do what you want to do. In fact, I am not telling you the person would willfully make it do things, but mistake could be made. And as far as I'm concerned, as the minister just said, or one of them said, I think something had to put a male and he might put a female. Now, obviously, mistakes should be made, and mistakes are likely to be made. So I would feel the electoral office should have the kind courtesy to call back someone and say, look, I've made a mistake. So that then that would help the people, not saying that they're maneuvering. But don't tell me any machine you maneuver and you have skill in it, you could make it do what you want. You might be able to, because you could print wrong information willfully or purposefully. Okay. I'm not saying that they do it. So please don't tell me it cannot happen. It could happen.
Okay. Thank you, caller. Gentlemen?
Blossom, I sort of kind of lost here in terms of where we said that it can't happen, because Mr. Millett did draw the example relative to the person and how it is done. And the truth be told is that we do call people, right? We call people. Now, some people may choose to take it to the media or elsewhere before contacting the office, and that is what Mr. Phillip was alluding to earlier, right? But the office is one that we interface with persons, especially because, as Mr. Millett said, the list has to be published, right? We can't publish wrong information. So if there's an error, that has to be done. And that's what the verification process is. Now, when that process gets to my level, I go through and I send my cards. Now, when you send back the card, Mr. Miller didn't say that, you have to go through the entire process again. Not maybe bringing in information, but the person who entered information. If it's a simple something that, okay, when you look at the document you use to register and the person's entry. So, for example, you might spell, the name incorrectly. For example, I've seen cases where Phillip is spelled with one L, two L's, right? Pascal, one L, two L's at the end. Now, in that case where that kind of error is made, when I pick it up, I send the card back, then the process back to get corrected, right? So in that case, it don't really involve getting the person to come in. So we correct at that level, right? But if it's one where, as Mr. Phillip said, the and we get to the sense that printing it, of course it has to be, because the person is given a slip, and when they come back, they must verify that, before the card is delivered. So we do engage the public in that way.
There's a question on Facebook that asks, was the law amended to address the expiration of voters' registration card? Any reissuance of a card due to expiration warrants an amendment to the RPA Cap 286A. According to the Act, from 34 lists lost, stolen, destroyed, mutilated, and defaced as reasons for reissuance, but expiration isn't listed there.
Blossom, we at our very first press conference, we addressed this issue, right? And we said we were advised by the legal department that this can be treated as an administrative matter. You don't need to, you could, or you don't need to. In other words, that amendment, you don't need an amendment to continue in terms of that process. And we said that very early, right? Because we were in discussion prior to that press conference with the legal department. We were waiting, but by the time we get to the press conference, we were given that sort of information from the legal department.
All right, let me go back to the phone.
Also,
yes, go ahead, Mr. Phillip.
Just want to remind persons also, persons they remain on the list. Their names are not removed from the electorate. All that happened is that the card expired at the end of January 2020. And so the office engaged and is engaging in a process of replacing the expired voter ID card. Okay, so persons need to be aware of that. All we are doing is replacing that expired voter ID card, and yes, we do hear the concerns that persons have raised, but even in terms as the Form 34 was quoted, no persons would be aware that we do not ask them to get it signed by a JP or anything like that. Basically, it's just to capture some information. The form is not really used because it's not a reissuance, but a replacement that is being done. And so persons need to be aware of that.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Ms. Blossom, and good morning to the gentlemen on the panel. I just have one brief question. It is concerning a website, gov.gd/register-vote, and it invites people on that website to apply for elections or for voting. I just want some clarity, so to speak, from the electoral office on that process. It's on the Government of Grenada's website. While I agree that things should be digital, but based on the description of how we should register to vote, is this correct to be doing? To have a website on the government page
providing a portal to apply now to register.
Thank you, caller. Gentlemen?
Okay, if I was to respond on this here, the Parliamentary Elections Office, we have our website, peogrenada.org. And this is the only website that is controlled by the Parliamentary Elections Office. This is the only website which we disseminate information to the public. As the caller made mention, the government of Grenada has their website. Whatever information they reference or they're putting up, it is not in collaboration with us or with our website. Our website, all we do at the office here, in terms of maintaining our website, the information we put up, everything here is related to us. So I would say information relating to electoral matters should be derived from the Parliamentary Elections website. Whatever, as a matter of fact, I haven't been on the Government of Grenada website in quite a while. Maybe if I'm seeking some information or trying to get some contact or so. I believe they would have copied some pages from the website in terms of the information for registration, which anyone can do on any website. You want to copy some information to put forward. This is what I believe they would have done, but in no way we are connected to the government's website. Our website is hosted by us right in here. There is no external connection or anybody else has access to it. Neither do we have access to information on the government website. So we are just concerned in our jurisdiction here as it relates to the web and the information we give. All the data resides inside in-house.
There is a WhatsApp question. Somebody is inquiring if I am divorced, still use my married surname, my voter's card need to be renewed. What do I have to carry to carry out such transaction? I guess if the person is divorced and they are still using their married surname, what do they have to walk with to get the new card?
So according to the law, replacement cards, there is a $20 fee for replacement card. Now, because the cards would have expired and these cards are being replaced, persons get the replacement card for free. You have one opportunity to get a replacement card for free. Every subsequent replacement, if it is not because it would have expired, you have to pay that $20 fee, carry the receipt to the office. If you are divorced and you need to return to your previous last name, then you need to show documentation why you are going back. So your divorce document has to be presented also when you go back to register. So you are Blossom Alexis-Welsh, yes, Blossom Alexis-Welsh. Whatever the reason you decide to go back to your Blossom Alexis, right now you are not Blossom Alexis, you're Blossom Alexis-Welsh. That's who you are now. So persons tend to believe, again, because on my birth certificate, my dad's name is there, my mom's name is there, I can use any of which I choose, and this is not the case. So to go back to your first name, you have to carry documentation that shows I'm dropping my husband's last name, and this is a document to prove it because I'm no longer who I was, I am now who I was previously. So these documents must also be brought in for the registration process.
All right, let me go to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Morning, go ahead, please.
Listen, I'm asking a question. Can you tell me, please, that how long does it take after one registers? I know that was said. I just come to the phone. If that was said before, how long does it take after one is registered before he or she can get the ID card?
Thank you, caller. We dealt with it before, but for the people who may have missed it, Mr. Morain, maybe?
I would ask Miller to just go over again.
No problem.
In terms of what he said, yeah. I mean, sorry that the caller missed that part.
No problem.
So by law, and previously we would have done a card in just about 2 weeks. Sometimes based on the volume, persons get a card within 1 week because it goes through various processes. And as was mentioned earlier, when you have, like in a polling, in a constituency office, you have 200 persons registering today, for example, 200 persons coming today. At the close, we have the registration officer has to go through this documentation to make sure all the documents are fine. That's 200 documents that person has to go through. And you may decide, here's what, I'm not certain if that person is in that PD or that PD, so I may have to go out and do a visit, a site visit to ascertain which PD exactly that person belongs to. So this process now, because of the volume, it is taking a little more time than normal. But normally cards should have been done in about 2 weeks. And as I made mention earlier, because of the backlog we would have had with a lot of persons coming to register, it is slowing down a bit. So we're almost to the point, and almost meaning I reckon by the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks, we should be exactly where we want to be, where we can return your card for you in a 2-week period. But because of the volume we would have had, it was quite a lot to process all these on time. So persons would have waited for quite a while, but I can assure you, or we can assure you, that the waiting period is nothing like it was, let's say, a month or 2 months ago. Persons now, we're in the vicinity of 2.5, 3 weeks, possibly a month max, but by the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to be right back to that 2-week cycle for cards distribution. But persons must rest assured that they are still on the list. I've heard persons saying that if an election is called and they didn't get a new card, then they can't vote. This is not true. You're still on the list. You can check it on peogrenada.org, put your name in there, search, and you can see that you are on.
There's a Facebook question, a comment. The opening and closing hours of the Parliamentary Elections Office should be revised to accommodate people who are working. Has thought been put into adjusting the closing hours, or even the opening hours as well, of the office?
No, Blossom, we have not. We addressed that before, put any thought into that. The office opens basically at 9, with a break from 1 to 2 for lunch, and we close at 5. Now, we have to appreciate that, as everything else. While I do appreciate some persons might be leaving, maybe are working quite a distance from their constituency, and it may be difficult for them to get registered. But I think it doesn't hurt, Blossom, for you to make some sort of arrangement to get to the office and get registered, right? So it's something that we have not given consideration to.
Another Facebook question. Why does the system not allow you to put in your occupation? Why do you have to fall under the occupation that is in the database?
Okay, so here's what. The occupation in the database, when the system was designed in 2012, thereabout, an entire list of occupations, locations are in. One, if persons have to type in information all the time, the chances of error is a little bit high. Persons can find groups of occupation because the reason the occupation is on the voters list is really to identify persons. You may have 3 Blossom Alexis-Welsh. One is a nurse, one is a radio announcer, one is a bus driver. The occupation is so that we can identify when you come at the polling station with a card, Blossom Alexis-Welsh, here's what, oh, this is Blossom, who is the radio announcer. Because on your card, and I am looking at a card right now, on your voter's card, there is no occupation. The occupation is printed on the voter's list and is basically to identify persons. And some people want a specific occupation. And if you want a specific occupation in these last days, there are so many occupations now that weren't there before. We're going to have a whole list of it. And in the end, when you want to do maybe some analysis and you want to pull the data, it may become very difficult. But again, the reason for the occupation is so that we can distinguish person A from person B who may have the same name by the occupation. If the occupation was printed on the card, I could have seen reason why person may say, I want this occupation. But here's what. You can be a bus driver today, printed on your card, and tomorrow you're something else. This is why the occupation is not printed on the card. So it is only for us to identify which of the persons is that person when there is need for voting.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, citizen. Well, greetings and greetings to you, members of your panel there. A couple of things before I ask my substantive question. Listen, I'd like these gentlemen to understand that when you speak to the population of varying levels of IQ and intelligence, you have to be absolutely careful. I was told by the supervisor election day there that the cards would have been issued. I have one. Sir, I have a card. And to the others, because they continue to make them, they're giving spurious information to the people. If something would have happened, it did not happen, sirs. Please concentrate on what you have to say before you speak to the population. 2, my investigations have led me to understand, and I'll give my sources from the same electoral office, 80,000. Ministry of Education, a combined population of school children, secondary and primary, 22,000. From the births and registries, approximately 16,000. In other words, babes, sucklings, and toddlers. How do we reconcile that with a population and having 110 pardon? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rollo. Gentlemen?
Now, if I want to respond to that, and I hope I will do justice to this. Now, the demographic of any population, right? You have different, as the color indicates, different composition. But there are persons, of course, who maybe in the last census weren't really part of this arrangement, right? In terms of the last, and they might be residing abroad. You know, people have different reasons. So I think to look at the data in that way, I'm not sure if it's the best way to approach it. You know, because like at any given time, you cannot see, okay, look, this is the amount of person. It's a sort of fuel thing, right? And then people would give information in terms of school children, in terms of, and then you also would have, in some cases, you can have what we call in mathematics an intersection, right? Where persons can be represented in different categories. So for example, a child who might be in school age can also be, you know, part of you know, another group in the sense that, okay, well, look, you're talking about, in other words, a child who is 18 in secondary school age. So you might come there, but also you're part of the voters list, right? So those dynamics, you know, we need to look at. So you can't just make a global, you know, observation in relation to different composition as it relates to the population. I hope that would have some clarity. I don't know if any of the other gentlemen would like to comment.
Well, just to support what you just said there, it's years ago I used to hear a joke being told that half of Grenada's population resided in Trinidad. Though that may be a bit far-fetched, however, it gives you an idea that, and it's not only with Grenada, but with several other countries, islands, that a vast portion of their population operates as a diaspora, not necessarily residing in the country per se, but abroad. So that has to be factored into the figures that was just given by the caller.
A question on the WhatsApp. If I want to register in a different constituency, is there a particular process, or do I just go in and register like how I would go renew my card at the current or the past constituency office?
In terms of the process, basically you are moving from one constituency to another. This will incur a fee. If you are going to register in a different constituency now, as Mr. Minette said earlier, because we are replacing the voter's ID, if you go now, you would have that ID replaced without cost to you. There is a cost to it, of course, but it's basically free to you. However, if having gotten the replaced ID, you want to go to a different constituency, then you would need to first go to the revenue office and pay the $20 fee, indicating that you are paying for a replacement ID. And then you can proceed to that new constituency and have that process done. However, what persons need to be aware of, and sometimes we hear it being erroneously put out in the general public, once you go to a different constituency to have that process done, to be registered there, your name is going to be removed from the old constituency. And that's part of the process. Okay, your name is going to be removed and you would now be reflected as registered in a different constituency.
Somebody's inquiring if there's a process for home registration, for instance, for the people who are bedridden or may not be able to leave their home for other reasons. Yes, we do have a process for that. We call that a mobile registration. Persons who are at home and unable to come to the office to register, they would call the constituency office and say, here's what, I am at home, or my mom is home, or that person is ill and they can't come to the office. Can you come to get them registered? An appointment date would be set with that person. And yes, we do go to that person's home and get them registered, because we have what we call a mobile unit, where every piece of equipment that is in the offices is also in that unit. So we do go to person's home and get them registered. And we've done lots of that. Now, because of the COVID situation, this is on halt for now, because we know of the protocol. But as soon as we are able to do that, we are going to resume, because we have a long list of persons who are making requests for the mobile registration, but we do facilitate this process. A Facebook question. I went to the Parliamentary Elections Office at DECO building a couple of times prior to COVID-19 and was turned away because they said the equipment at the time was out of commission. So the question is if the process has recommenced, and in case the equipment is still down, can that person register at the main office, or what avenue or process they should take in that instance? Okay, so prior to COVID, there was a time when we had an issue with our document scanner. And in that particular office, yes, St. George Northeast B, that's in DECO building, for I think it was less than a week, we had an issue there where we would have had some failed document scanner. This was replaced and registration was going on since before COVID would have started. So the process is on, the process continues. But again, it's hardware we're dealing with, and hardware do fail at times. And it just so happened that that person would have gone in at a time when the hardware would have failed. Now, everything is back up. All of our offices are functioning. Again, we don't register people at the main office, because you go to register that constituency office, the cards and everything is processed and done here at the main office and sent back to that office. Why? Because when you collect your card, you have to give your fingerprints. So the office where you register, this is where you collect the cards. No registration is done here at main office. And our final caller. Good morning, caller.
Yes, my dear. I didn't think I would get to you. What I want to find out is if I, by circumstances or by choice, I do not have a new or replace a voter registration, what happens on the day of an election? I do not have a replaced one. I still have the old one. If by choice or by circumstances I did not get it renewed, what happens on the day of election? Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
I guess my other colleagues can also add their input, but from my understanding, you are on the voters list. We cater for continuous registration, and a person is by law on the voters list. And once you are on the voters list, you cannot be debarred from voting. And this is what persons need to be aware of. Now, we urge persons, because as Mr. Millett quoted the website addressed earlier, peogrenada.org, that all the documents, the CAP 286A, the original document, and all of the amendments are on the site. And we urge persons to go and read for themselves. Don't take it from us, we are quoting from these documents, but go and read for themselves. However, as I say, just adding my 2 cents to it, at the end of the day, we are not removing persons from the list. By law, you remain on that list, you remain part of the electorate. What we are doing, and I guess sometimes we get a little, it becomes a little murky, but what we are doing is simply replacing a voter ID card that expired. However, we are not doing anything to your registration, to your name that is on that list, which qualifies you to vote.
And there's a question on the WhatsApp.
So before you go, I just want to just re-emphasize that because it was said in certain circles and through the media, right, that you would not be allowed to vote. So we want to just reinforce and basically give the public the assurance that once you are duly registered, we cannot debar you from voting.
The WhatsApp question, which would possibly be the last, is there any truth to the widely held view that there is a direct access from the Prime Minister's office to the Electoral Office's database?
So this is in my domain. And here's what Blossom, you know, there are times we listen to things, even though it doesn't make sense, it sounds good, so we can run with it. And everybody knows where you work now, Blossom, at the radio station here. You have your servers, and so you have your other client computers that are connected to it, and you have access there. If you take your computer that you're working with at your desk here now, and you go home and you plug it up, you have no access to the information that is on your server at work because they cannot see each other. Persons I've heard it a lot, and even when the issue came up about computers that were stolen and printers that were stolen and whatever here. In order for the computers at the main office, at the constituency office, to be able to do anything, they must connect to the server that we have here. And all our locations, there is a lot of security measure that has been put in place. So while I go along with this, the answer is no. There is no outside connection. And even if you take a computer from one of the outside offices and you go anywhere else with it and you plug it up, it cannot see our servers. There is no data, absolutely no data stored on any of the office computers. So a computer crashes, we can replace it easily. Somebody steals it, you have nothing to worry about. They can't do anything with it because it cannot connect to our servers in here. Apart from this, again, this is one of the reasons why the office would have embarked on doing a website, giving persons the ability to search for their names on the list. And you know, sometimes it baffles me in that persons who know better, and they know better, still put it out there, giving people the idea that here's what the office is doing this and the office is doing that. The list is published, it is there for public scrutiny. Anybody who puts a name on the list, you look at the list and you see a name, everybody has the right to object to a registration. And this is the rights that people have. So if we were to determine or we were to decide to do our own thing at the office, the list must come out. You see a list that has a strange name on it, you can object to it. There is a process. And this is really where the baffling comes in here. The process takes time. And persons have lists, full lists are printed every year. We have the addendum list, we have the consolidated list. And persons have 5 years, 20 printed lists where they can contest names. And as soon as an election is called, 2 weeks before election, you have objections. So people's names should be removed from the list. And then it is said that the office is not doing what they're supposed to. But you had 20 lists before. And persons know that there is a process that goes on. So not because you object to somebody's name on the list, the office should say, here's what, let's remove that person. The law gives the procedure for doing this. And persons are just trying at times to create that kind of environment and atmosphere for whatever their reasoning or their purpose is. But here's what. This is the way the process works, and this is what it is.
Okay.
If I can also quickly add. There's a scripture that says, I think to this effect in Proverbs, it says, he that is first in his own cause seems just or seems right. But then he say another man comes and searches him out or exposes him. And what it simply means that sometimes when you hear people say things for the first time, it tends to be believable. And then when you hear the other side of the coin, you know, sometimes you gawk, you are shocked because at first you heard the first person and you believe. And we are appealing to persons out there because at the end of the day, a lot of information, obviously, go through the grapevine. And not all grapevine news is good news. Persons do give information, yes, in relation to the office also, and not all of it is truth. But we are urging those persons who operate at times as paragons of truth, you know, to please ensure that you have it right before you go there and carry that information. As Mr. Miller said something a while ago, and that always stuck within my mind. The computers at the sub-offices, yes, they are used by our employees. However, if somebody steals one, they do not have access to the information that is critical to any elector. Now, persons have gone out there and kept on carrying, and I will use a term here, that piece of fake news, and it has found traction. But we do believe that there are several persons, because we are an educated population, persons who know for a fact that if it's separated from the server, it is basically a dud, you know, in relation to the information that is critical. And so we are urging persons, we do invite the criticisms that come out there. We believe that in part it makes us better. It allows us to strengthen the whole electoral process. But we are urging persons who would be so minded to ensure that you have the facts before you go there and share those information. Secondly, and finally on my part, we want to remind persons that, like with all other entities, COVID-19 protocols are in place. And so we are urging you that the 6 feet distancing is factored, that you are urged to wear your mask. You know, please, we are urging you with that, the hand sanitizer and so forth. This is not only to protect you, but it's also to protect our officers and other members of the general public who would come after you. And though, by and large, I must say that the public has been very cooperative and they are to be commended, there are one or two niggling incidents where persons seem to want to flout the laws. And so again, it's an appeal, you know, from the office to persons to be mindful of that. Thank you very much.
And in summary, Blossom, I just give my summary now. I know we are almost out of time.
Out of time, actually.
The system that is being used now is the same system that was instituted in 2012. There is no change. As a matter of fact, we are unable to make any change. And we want to assure the public that the same process of registration that is being done today in 2020, it is the same as was in 2012, 2013. It is the identical system with absolutely no change to it. We cannot make any change to it. I just want to assure the public this, and others who are saying otherwise. Nothing has changed.
So Blossom, from my end, I want to just back up on something that Mr. Phillip said, relative to, you know, in terms of persons there who are become advocates of different, whether the Constitution or acts and so on. And the office has been very open in terms of engaging persons. Right? We have engaged quite a number of persons, and we will continue to do so because we believe it's important to have as many engagements as possible in terms of especially persons who are involved, integral to the process. But you know, I have a difficulty with persons who would come and they would have an engagement with you. And I have no problem if you disagree with what we are saying. But of course, at least put to the public what was said and not give misinformation. So if we had an engagement with you, say exactly what we told you. Don't give part of the story. Put the context out there. You may say, okay, well, look, as a disclaimer, we don't agree, which is okay. But of course, I think it's sort of, to me, dishonest and unethical to have an engagement, and out of that, you would go and you would put out part of the information as if to mislead the public. It's something I think we need to be a little more responsible. We do understand the nature of the parliamentary election process, and we are committed to doing our best. We are committed to engaging persons to ensure that we maintain the integrity of the process. We have at the back end in terms of looking at the observers' report in detail, we are going to be engaging all the relevant stakeholders before we even intend as to who we're going to address it. Some might be administrative, some might be involving some sort of amendment, legislative change. So we have to engage as far as possible persons. The COVID-19 has kind of put us a little bit back because we were hoping to look at that within the beginning of the third quarter of the year, so we can begin to have serious engagement, but we are committed to do that as an office. I also want to, it'd be remiss of me if I leave this program not extending my appreciation to the workers, in the process, the people at the head office, the persons at the parliamentary election offices. I think they've done an excellent job. As Mr. Ferdinand said, that sometimes you could have niggling problem, but they can get to a certain level where it can take the best out of you. And I think we have been managing well, in terms of engaging persons and interfacing with the public. So I want to congratulate and commend all of the officers involved in the process. We know it takes a lot for us to get to a stage where we can feel comfortable in terms of replacement, in terms of the numbers, but we are working steadfast to deliver that to the public. So we again want to thank the public and assure them that we'll continue to do our best to ensure that the quality and the integrity of the process is maintained. Okay. I want to thank you us for making the accommodation, because we know that you had your open line this morning. We really appreciate the fact that you made that adjustment to have us this morning. So I just want to wait and be in public, a safe weekend, and let's continue to observe as much as possible. We have a part to play in the mitigation efforts as it relates to COVID-19 and how we go forward. So I want to encourage everyone out there, let us play our part to make sure that we have a safe society and we can feel comfortable in the new normal also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you, gentlemen. Have yourselves a productive Friday and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks much.
Representatives of the Parliamentary Elections Office, Supervisor of Elections Elvis Morain, Voter and Civic Registration Officer Ferdinand Phillip, and Systems Administrator Michael Millet. We thank them all for being our guests this morning. We've robbed some time out of Janelle's mid-morning buzz. She's up next. I'll be back with you on Monday, God willing. Have yourselves a safe, productive, and enjoyable weekend.